and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren, from Lauren and the Books. I should tidy up around here, really, shouldn't I? That doesn't look that great. Welcome to August wrap-up. It's the last Sunday in August. September, I can feel it. I can feel it coming. Autumn is almost here. I've even put on a sort of like autumnal coloured dress for it. Look at the sleeves on this. Absolutely gorgeous, isn't it? But yeah, let's talk about my reading in August. So I read 8 books in August, which is a lot, but it's not up to my normal numbers. Normally I read sort of like between 13 to 15 books a month. I think I can put this down to a lot of things. The fucking heat being one of them. I do not like hot weather and I struggled to sort of concentrate on anything. I was very unwell for 2 weeks. More on that at some point, but not in this video. But yeah, I was really unwell for 2 weeks, which meant I couldn't concentrate on anything, added to the heat, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I think that's why, not that I'm disappointed in myself. You read as much as or as little as you want, babes. You do whatever you want, Lauren. You're just getting by, doing really well. So yeah, 8 books. So out of those 8 books, 3 were audio, which is 37.5% of my reading this month, along with 3 were library, which is 37.5% of my reading this month, and 2 I owned, which was 25% of my reading for this month. So if we add that to the stats for this year, I realise I didn't do this for last month, so annoying that I've missed out a month. I read 86 books this year so far, well done. 27 of those I've owned, which is 31% of my reading. 24 of those I've got out from my library, which is 28% of my reading. One of my New Year's resolutions this year was that I wanted to read more from the library. I have been absolutely boshing that every single month. I'm so pleased with myself. And I read 28 audiobooks, which is 33% of my reading and of the year. And then I've read 6 proof editions, which is 7% of my reading. However, I've noticed, so for example, this month at the end of the book, at the end of this video, I'm gonna talk briefly about Washington Black, which is a finished copy, but I'm sure the publisher sent me this. So yeah, I'm only in proofs. I'm only sort of counting things that are proofs. I'm not counting stuff that's sent from the publisher, but I don't really know why that is relevant. So yeah, I guess we'll just get on with the reading. So let's start at the very beginning of the month, why don't we, with the first audiobook I listened to, which was Kay's Marvellous Medicine by Adam Kay. Adam Kay is the writer of one of my favourite books of all time, This Is Going to Hurt. He is an ex-junior doctor who left the profession after years and years of stress and toil and just having a terrible time, and he's now a writer, writes TV shows, writes books, and this is his latest offering, which is aimed at children. And I think it's very much a sort of horrible histories-esque look at the human body. But yeah, and it wasn't aimed at me. I thought I would get from it some of the heart and humour that I found in This Is Going to Hurt, and subsequently in The Night Shift Before Christmas, which was a Christmas version of like from his Christmas diaries of being a junior doctor. But yeah, it was just it was just not written for me, and it was just literally full of poo, weed, fart, pus, blood. Just so many sort of like jokes that weren't aimed at me, and it was odd because as someone who enjoys a children's book, this was just too much for me. I think I'll leave all of the poo, wee and shit to the kids. So yeah, 1 star I gave that. Next up was The Rose and the Yew Tree by Agatha Christie, but writing as Mary Westmacott. I found out about this book. I was listening to A Good Read, and this was a book that was mentioned on that, which is a Radio 4 podcast, which is like a sort of book club with different people on it. Very much enjoyed it. And I sort of also very much enjoyed this book as well. I found it sort of like enjoyably pleasant, sort of mystery romance type thing, which was set in a small town full of eccentric and unlikable characters, including like our main character who we were mainly focusing on. I enjoyed how much they were all very much involved in each other's lives, and yeah, I think it read very true to how I imagine those sort of small villages run. And it was set in a sort of in a time where where they were electing a new member of parliament for the area, and it was a very conservative area, and the guy who's coming in to run as the Conservative MP was not a very nice character, but seemed to manage to get everybody on his side. And yeah, I just found it very enjoyable. And so I'd read the first Agatha Christie book I ever read was And Then There Were None, which I loved. Then I've been through a sort of series of Poirot-esque ones. which I haven't enjoyed as much. But this one, although I didn't enjoy it as much as And Then There Were None, I definitely enjoyed this book much more than I had done with the Poirot-esque one. So yeah, if you're looking for another Agatha Christie, try a bit of the old Mary Westmacott. I don't know if she wrote many books under the name of Mary Westmacott, but enjoyable. Next up, another library book that's been returned to the library. That's Be Yourself and Happier, the A to Z of Wellbeing by Will Young. This was a book that I sort of like, when I was at my peak of not really getting on very well with reading, this was one I sort of like dipped in and out of. It does basically what it says on the tin. It is an A to Z of Wellbeing from Will Young, who is a pop star. I know him best as a pop star, but recently has been doing a lot more to do with well-being, has a podcast, and has been writing books about all sorts of different topics, including one about being gay, to be a gay man, I think it was called, and that was all involved with sort of like gay shame and things like this. This is sort of an overview and a light dusting on various terms associated with well-being and mental health, but I did learn a few bits nevertheless. But like with these things is that you can never do a sort of deep dive, and whereas like one page I'd read like literally a paragraph on something, then there'd be like 6 pages on the next thing, and it just felt all a bit sort of misbalanced. And I appreciated the examples and stuff that Will would put in here, and he'd try, although being of pop star, like writing this from a pop star's perspective when he has got much more money and sort of assets, I guess, than many of the people reading this book, I appreciated his attempts at looking at different examples for all of these situations from different walks of life. So I did appreciate that. But yeah, I gave it 2 stars. I just felt like, yeah, it was just, I mean, how good can these books be? Has anyone ever read a sort of A to Z of something, or like an introduction to something and thought, oh yeah, this is brilliant? Like, how... Are they really made of stuff that's going to make me think, oh, that's absolutely blown my mind? I don't know if they are. Next up was the 6 Tudor Queens book that I read this month. I will link the vlog down below. Just realised this reading wrap-up is going to be much, much quicker than normal because there's such little books, and also because I wasn't feeling well, I've written very little on top. Have I mentioned I wasn't feeling well? I've written very little on what I thought about these books. But yeah, 6 Tudor Queens, Anna of Kleve, Queen of Secrets. That's the 4th book in the 6 Tudor Queens series. As I said, I'll link the vlog down below. I'm doing a whole reading vlog, reading all 6 of these books, and yeah, next month I'll be reading the penultimate one. I'll be sad when they're all over, I think. This I very much enjoyed. It was different to previous reading experiences because I listened to the audiobook of this rather than read the book. I knew I was going to have a very busy beginning of the month, and that's when I do these reading vlogs, at the beginning of the month. My colleague was away on holiday, so I was in the office every day, so I knew I'd have a drive in and out from work every day, so I thought, oh, well, this will be perfect. I'll listen to it. And yeah, whilst I got on with the listening of it, I think because I was so used to reading these books and flicking to the back of the book and seeing the timeline and seeing the dramatis personae and looking at the family trees at the beginning of the book, I feel like I didn't get as much from it in that way because I was used to doing that. But I still really liked it, and I really liked Anna. Something I liked about this book in particular compared to the other 3 is that this religion features not as much in this book, which is unusual because the sort of towards the end of her life, religion becomes a very sort of like important part of Anna's life. But yeah, the whole book it felt much more modern, and Anna felt like a much more modern queen than the previous 3 ones. But as I said, I wasn't feeling very well, and it tapered off towards the end. But yeah, I enjoyed it still, and I liked Anna a lot. Did I like Anna more than, because at the moment Catherine of Aragon's still my favourite queen. I might have liked Anna more than Catherine of Aragon, you know. I liked her an awful lot as a person. These books, these Alison Weir books, I've been having such a lovely time and learning such a lot, but they're also quite embellished in terms of history. So the secret that is alluded to here is that she has a child before she marries Henry VIII, which is, well, pure fiction. I mean, where's it come from? Did Alison Weir just pluck that out of the air and think I'll stick that in there? But there we go. Next up was one of the best book I've read this month. Yeah, absolutely. Tender by Belinda McEwen. David picked my TBR for the month of August, and he picked this book, which was a library book that I'd had in and out. Oh my god, I fucking loved this book. So this is a book set in the 90s, in between Dublin and Longford, which I've got sort of a few ties with Ireland. I've got some friends who one friend that I lived with, friends that I've been friends with since middle school, who's now married an Irish girl. So like we get over to, not not so much recently, but like I was getting over to Ireland a little bit, and one of the places that I tend to visit when I go there, because I have friends there, is Longford. So this book is set between Dublin and Longford, which I enjoyed. I've never read an Irish book set in Longford before, so enjoyed that. And it tells the story of a very intense friendship between two characters, James and Catherine, and it's set into different sort of like sections of the book, so different parts of the book, which are so differently written. It kept it so fresh and so interesting, as well as me being really invested in this sort of toxic friendship. Who's David talking to? Maybe he's making Yorkshire puddings to take to my mum's for roast dinner, so maybe that's what he's talking about. But yeah, I thought that even down to like, you really got to know these characters, you really got to know James and Catherine, even down to like the little, I've written nuances, I think that's what I mean, and sort of like the darker sides of their personality as well. You really felt like you were in their brains and experiencing like all of their thoughts, including the darker ones. 2 seconds. Yes? Oh, were you talking to me? Who is it?
Your mum.
Oh, what does she want? Right, okay. My dad's coming around to pick up the veg, is that what you're saying? Yeah. I'll keep an eye out the window for him.
Lovely, no. Alright, see you later. Bye.
I feel like those little chats have interrupted how much I loved this book, but let me tell you, I really, really enjoyed it. So like, as I was saying, differently written sections. Parts of it read like a sort of literary fiction, parts of it read as a thriller. Yeah, it was just a complete success, and I really, really loved it and felt really, really invested in these two characters and their friendship and where it was going, and was sort of like horrified at moments the way they were treating each other or talking about each other when they were supposed to be friendship. But then moments happened that I really wasn't expecting. It was just so full of twists and turns. I thought it was absolutely marvellous. Really, really loved it, so would highly, highly recommend. Then we're on to the books that I've got here. As I said, I read a lot of library books and audio books, which have had photos that I'm sure appearing up here. Oh, it's David whizzing the Yorkshire puddings now. So the next one I did listen to as an audiobook, but I was actually sent the proof copy of this earlier this year, and that's Theatre of Marvels by Leanne Dilsworth. Lovely front cover with this leopard on here. This, I think, in all honesty, I enjoyed the premise of this more than I actually enjoyed the book. So this is set in Victorian times, and is set in a Theatre of Marvels, which sort of showcases different things that the Victorian public are used to seeing, let's put it that way. And we're following Zilla, who is our main character, and more recently the sort of person who runs this Theatre of Marvels is becoming involved in sort of like the trading in people, and like I said, people who aren't used to being seen by the Victorian public. There's some really awful bits, there's some sort of like boring bits, if I'm being honest. I enjoyed the fact that it was person of colour centred, because I don't think that's a perspective you hear from much in terms of Victorian books, and there were people of colour in Victorian times, no matter how much my sort of history lessons at school led me to believe otherwise. Yeah, I didn't feel like much of it left a lasting impact on me, and yeah, like I said, I think I enjoyed the premise more than I actually enjoyed the book, so that's a shame, but yeah, that's how I felt about that. Then today I have finished Sitting Pretty, The View from My Ordinary Resilient Disabled Body by Rebecca Tausig. This is a selection of essays from Rebecca talking about different aspects of living inside a disabled body and what everyday life might look like, what interactions with other people might look like, what getting a job, finding a house, just sort of everything from a disabled body. And it was really sort of like eye-opening for me, not to literally use a quote from the back of the book, because I think it does say eye-opening essay collection that processes a lifetime of memories to paint a beautiful nuanced portrait of a body that looks and moves differently than most. It really was eye-opening for me, and like sort of made me question my ableism. There's so many things that I do, well, my whole life basically I do, which I don't have a second thought into how that might be different for somebody who doesn't have a body as able as mine. And obviously it was sort of quite confronting in that situation, but I really, really love the writing here. She writes with such a sort of I use the term affability when I reviewed this on Instagram, that you actually feel like you're sort of sat having a chat with her while this is going on, and like it all feels so sort of well explained, which of course it will be, it's her day-to-day life, without shying away from like the more difficult side of things, but also just we're also using humour, but not as a sort of like deflection technique either. Like I really thought this was really important and educational. And yeah, I loved her writing. I would read much, much more writing by Rebecca. So there we go. And then just before I get on to the last book that I finished, so I finished this today as well, Washington Black by A-Z of Wellbeing. But that's my Patreon book club book that we're talking about tonight. And I know sometimes people, my Patreons, like to find out how I felt about the book on Patreon book club. So I'm going to leave that till last, so that if you are a Patreon, you can just turn off the video. But I'm halfway through this, and I think I will probably finish this before the end of August, so it won't appear in my September wrap up. This is You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emeze. This is a sort of like romance book, I guess. I wasn't expecting it to be a romance book, but it's a romance book about a young girl, Faye, who married very young to her high school sweetheart, and sadly he was in an unfortunate accident which led to him dying, and this is her sort of like finding her feet again and getting back on the dating game and having sex for the first time with somebody after she's lost her partner, and then finding out like a link with somebody else, and then potentially a link with somebody else, and then she's gone on this sort of like amazing holiday with one of these guys, with a guy that she's like sort of seeing but not really, and she's finding that she has quite the connection with his father, who I really hope you could hear me above the blending of the Yorkshire puddings, I'm sure you can. Finding out that she has a link with his father, who also lost his wife, his partner, and yeah, his father's a chef, so there's loads of amazing food writing in there. The place where they're staying sounds amazing, and I'm just having an absolutely wonderful time with it. I'm really, really, really enjoying it. I think it's going to be one of my favourite books of the year. It's actually made me put on my TBR for next month, spoilers, Pet, another book by Akwaeke Emeze, which is a YA book. So yeah, I won't include that. That probably won't include in my September wrap up, but I wanted to mention it because I'm just enjoying it so much. So yeah, lastly, I finished Washington Black by A-Z of Wellbeing, and if you are a Patreon member of mine and you don't want to find out my thoughts of this before book club tonight, see you later. This is the end of the video. But yeah, this is a Marvellous. I've said the word marvellous so many times today. I don't normally say the word marvellous. This is an adventure story, a sort of quite linear adventure story, which sort of like one thing leads to another, which then leads to another, and then they like span in many different continents, and there's so many different characters and things like this. It starts in a plantation on Barbados, where we are following the titular character, Washington Black, as a slave, and his relationship with, in particular, one other slave on the plantation, and him being used as a sort of apprentice boy to the plantation owner's brother. He finds that he has a real skill for drawing, and helps teach the plantation owner's brother. I feel like it's hard to describe this book without literally just telling you the plot, so I'll stop after this. Build this beautiful flying machine called a cloud cutter, and then that sort of journey begins, and then them testing this and using this sort of leads on to one thing and another and another. Really, really lovely writing. Really enjoyed that. Really enjoyed the sort of vast expansion of characters and different places it's set, and it really does span many, many places. We're in England one minute, and then in Morocco the next, and the Canadian Arctic and stuff like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this a lot, which I'm really, really pleased, because last month's Patreon book club book we did not enjoy so much. So yeah, looking forward to discussing this tonight. So there we go. Those are all the books that I read. This was actually longer than I thought it was going to be. Those are all the books that I read in the month of August. Let me know how your reading went in August, if you've read any of these books. If you had to pick one of these books to read, which one would you pick? And yeah, I guess I'll see you all again on Thursday for my September TBR. It is a big one, guys. Be ready. David's just loitering there to say something. Anything to add, David?
It's a big one!
It's a big one. See you all again soon for another BookTube video. Bye!